Welcome to the Political Napalm, and here's where I get to tell you I watched the Republican debate so that you don't have to. I'm sure at this point you've all seen some of the clips and have heard what happened in the Republican debate that occurred on Wednesday night, which was also the same night Trump took to Tucker's show and just basically rambled and prattled about his typical stuff. And then, of course, the next day, he, as the song says, the devil went down to Georgia and he went and got his mugshot taken. In case you're unaware of how that event played out, supposedly he self categorized himself as 6'3", 215 pounds. And I think everybody with a functioning brain knows that that man is definitely not 6'3", 215 pounds. It is pointed out that that is Muhammad Ali's fighting weight was 6'4", or 6'3", 214 pounds. My guess was without his lifts, 5'10", 323. It is unfortunate that we don't know the height and weight, as there was a lot of betting on it, and right now he has just basically described his own weight and height, and that is the only thing that has been released to the public. Twitter went a little bit crazy in the morning, where unfortunately the first supposed mugshot that was going around was not actually his mugshot. It was a Photoshop picture of him when he went to the courtroom for the E. Jean Carroll stuff, and it was people very quickly pointed out, well, no, he got off the plane in his red tie, and this is a swirl tie over here. So unfortunately, there was some fakery going on, but we do have the proper mugshot now with the seal in the background and the red tie. So this marks the first president in United States history that has a mugshot out there, and the right and the left currently right now have two different things. The right is putting it on t-shirts and mugs, and his son is trying to use it for monetary gain and sell merchandise with it on there, and the right is proud of it, and they're comparing it to icons such as like Martin Luther King's mugshot and everything. And I've even seen a reference to Johnny Cash with Folsom County, the Folsom prison and everything, but that was when he was actually there to play. He wasn't booked into it, he was there, and that's where that particular mugshot came about. But on the left, they're using it to post alongside Biden, and like the choice is very easy in 2024, and nonverbal communication specialists have basically said that it is contempt and anger and predation that is in the body language there. And of course, there is also the reference to the Kubrick stare, and that is the one that I think gets me, because that's the one I definitely agree with the most. It is the Stanley Kubrick stare on that one. So let's go ahead and jump right into what I thought of the Republican debate yesterday. So I'll show you a few clips first that I think kind of sum up a lot of things that were going on, and then I'll get into my breakdown on it. And believe me, it surprised me that I thought about watching this thing yesterday, but I was doing a little bit of double duty and watching it off to the side. I missed the beginning. Apparently the beginning leaned heavily into rich men north of Richmond, and this is something that is completely hysterical with conservatives right now, yet typical and funny, and you knew it was going to get there. Conservatives have embraced rich men north of Richmond, by the very ginger singer, and it's sort of become a bit of a mantra. And whereas I respect the artist and I respect his musicianship, and I think of it more as a class, and I probably do a breakdown on this channel at some point with what's going on with him, because it does get deeper. But I think of the song less as left and right, but more as in class, class wars, the lower and middle class versus the elites. And that's how I view the song. But the right has tried to say, this is our Sound of Freedom song. This is our 2,000 Mules kind of song. And reportedly, he's even turning down like $8 million record deals. But the funny thing is, with the original song, I don't like the fudge rounds, like the people getting fat on welfare comment and the fudge rounds and everything. And that's where I will eventually deal with that song and his other songs. But the funny thing is, the conservatives expected him to be one of them, but then he has come out and been pro-diversity, pro-melting pot, and believes it is a pillar of the United States, and now conservatives are done with him. They're like, diversity, what the hell? And they're done. They've turned on him at this point. So that is your Kid Rock caught with a can of Bud Light in Memphis moment over there for this guy. And this is what I've said on this channel before. This is where ID poll comes in. You can align with certain things, but as a human being, you are free to not join up, get a stamp outside the club that belongs to a political party. Get the Republican stamp or the Democrat stamp, and then go into the club and be expected to love everything about it. The bathrooms, the music, the drinks, the food, the bar food, the beer on tap. You are allowed to say, this has shitty bathrooms, but I like the music and the beer is meh. You can do that. You don't have to throw your lot in with every single talking point that a political party throws at you. Remember that. ID poll is something you don't have to live by. But let's go ahead and get into some of these clips here for the Republican debate. So Vivek started, I like to call him Vivek Trumper Swampy over here, because that's what this dude is. He basically was a stand-in for Trump yesterday, yet the very beginning of his introduction, well, let's go to the tape.
So first, let me just address a question that is on everybody's mind at home tonight. Who the heck is this skinny guy?
Look at that smile, though. I mean, look. This tells you everything you need to know about Vivek right here. This dude is a smarmy used car salesman. I'm formerly of New York. I've had people believe that my accent gives that impression. It's been watered down considerably now. It's more akin to California speak or news speech. And I was being trained in dumping the New York accent in high school when I was in a public speaking class. So I was already beginning to lose some of it before I even went to college south of the Mason-Dixon line. This is smarmy. This is used car salesman. This is the next attempt at being a cult of personality and a hollow figure, an empty shell of a politician. This guy is absolutely nothing. And to the people who think he came out of the debate scoring points or even winning it, I'm like, what the hell is up with you? Like, what are you thinking? This guy is just fake, and smarmy is the perfect word. I cannot think of a better word to describe Vivek Trumper Swampy over here than smarmy. But we'll continue.
Who the heck is this skinny guy with a funny last name, and what the heck is he doing in the middle of this debate stage? I'll tell you, I'm not a politician.
Of a mill worker's son who dares to defy the odds. The hope of a skinny kid with a funny name who believes that America has a place for him too.
I mean, good Lord, this is like Melania Trump basically doing Michelle Obama's speech almost to a T. I mean, this is, and the funny thing is, Chris Christie calls him out on it, and we'll get to that. So that's clip number one over here as to exactly what Vivek is about. I think that is perfect. Here is Ron DeSantis just short circuiting. I mean,
and I will not let you down. And
I will not let you down.
And I will not let you down.
It honestly looks like he just realized
and I will not let you
he
down.
peed his pants. That is the look of somebody who has warm piss dribbling down his leg. What is this lizard person smile? We've seen Casey DeSantis occasionally go lizard person. Ron DeSantis is not in control of his face and his emotions in a way that baffles me. He is totally a lizard person from V. His eyes are going to blink left to right like the first Men in Black at some point. This man cannot reach the White House, otherwise will be invaded by alien forces who want our water or a cockroach who wants sugar. I mean, there is... I'm sorry, this is...
And I will not
what
let
is
you
this?
down. And I will not let you down.
Yeah, I got warm piss going down my legs. I hope nobody notices. This is awful. I don't know what that is, but let's get into Nikki Haley versus Trump or Swampy over here. Nikki Haley is one of the ones that came out of this better than I thought. She had a lot of girl power vibes, and I think if she actually leaned into that a little bit, she would do well. If she tried to court Republican, right-wing, conservative, however you want to phrase it, if she tried to court the right-wing female vote, she may get somewhere. And she was also, I think, maybe one of the more middle-of-the-road and honest people yesterday. I liked her and Chris Christie more than anybody. Hated Vivek, hated DeSantis, surprised Pence actually grew a little bit of a spine there, or some hair on at least a testicle, but we'll get into that a little bit later.
Been pushing this lie all week,
You want
Nikki.
to go and defund Israel? You want to
Okay, let me address that. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to address each of those right now. This is the false lies of a professional politician. There you have it.
Your watch,
So the reality
make America less safe. You have no foreign policy experience, and it
True.
shows.
And you know what? The foreign policy experience that you all have shows a
Very true.
hopeless war
He
to
doesn't.
get into.
And he never will.
So our relationship with Israel will never be stronger than by the end of my first term. But it's not a client relationship. It is a friendship. And you know why?
Nobody
You've
could
been
hear
pushing
him.
this lie.
Nikki Haley did pretty well on that one. Here is a clip of Chris Christie.
Whether or not, look, here's the bottom line. Someone's got to stop normalizing this conduct. Okay? Now, and
I agree.
Now, whether or not you believe that the criminal charges are right or wrong, the conduct is beneath the office of President
Very true.
of the United
It's always
States.
been immature with Trump. Always been 3-year-old antics with him.
And you know, this is the great thing about this country. Booing is allowed, but it doesn't change the truth. It doesn't change the truth.
I love how it made it worse. Like, he had a smattering of boos and cheers, and then he calls out the boos, and everybody goes and boos at that one. It's strange. This is another good one here.
You've never done. I know a lot better.
There's a difference between that behavior. And
I know a lot better than you do. You've never done it like you've never done anything to try to advance the interests of this government except to put yourself forward as a candidate tonight. And here's the thing. We've stood up for law and order. I did it as U.S. attorney. I did it as governor. And I am not going to bow to anyone when we have a president of the United States who disrespects the Constitution. He said... He said,
Get your MSNBC contributor.
he said,
Shut up, Gary.
These are
he
politicized
said,
indictments, and we have to call out the truth.
Martha, it's important to say that the president said, Donald Trump said, it's okay to suspend the Constitution.
He did.
Now, the oath you take is to preserve,
forget it, but he
protect,
did.
and defend, not suspend. I will always stand up for our Constitution, regardless of the political pressure.
So, and then we'll have one last little quick one over here. This one is one of my favorites.
Listen.
Hold on. I've had enough already tonight of a guy who sounds like ChatGPT standing up here.
The line of the debate, in my opinion, the biggest dunk of the entire
last
debate.
Person in one of these debates, Brett, who stood in the middle of the stage and said, "What's a skinny guy with an odd last name doing up here?" was Barack Obama, and I'm afraid we're dealing with the same type of amateur standing on stage tonight.
Come on, give me a hug. Give me a hug just like you did to Obama.
The same type of amateur.
I mean, yeah, so Chris Christie called him out in real time on that. Like, Chris Christie knew he didn't have to go to the internet. He didn't have to go to the tape. He didn't have to look it up. He knew right then and there Vivek Trumper-Swampy had plagiarized Obama over there. So, okay, let's get into my opinions that aren't on these wonderfully memey clips over here. Pence comes out and was stronger than I thought, and he defended his choice on January 6th to go with the Constitution. He made reference to that many times, that he was there to put power and backing in the Constitution and not do what Trump asked of him that day. I'm kind of surprised one of his testicles descended last night. He's been trying to grow a pair recently with some of his commentary, but he definitely showed he has at least one functioning testicle and a little bit of a spine last night. Since I came into this maybe about a half hour late or so, I came into it before the lightning round. The lightning round was about halfway through my timing, so that's where I came into this. Vivek just struck me as a complete piece of shit Trumper, towed the Trumper line, acted as a little smarmy mouthpiece for Trump, acted basically as a stand-in for him on a lot of things. One of the only things that was different is Trump is pro-Israel, which I agree with. Vivek was called out for being anti-Israel, and he tried to fumble his way through that over there and say, no, I like their Iron Dome. We may get back to that, but yeah, not fond of Vivek early on. Christie comes out strong and swinging the whole way through. Sounds very unscripted, very off the cuff, but very prepared, and absolutely prepared for the debate and to go to war. I think it was pretty strong. New Yorkers and New Jerseyers don't always get along particularly well, but I actually liked him full way through here. In the beginning, I thought Haley was weak, and she called for a new generation of Republicans, but I don't necessarily know why she would do that, because she doesn't appeal to the young. She doesn't appear young. She doesn't appeal to the youth. I'm really surprised for her to act like a new, younger wave of Republicans is what is needed. And Vivek is there. Like, Vivek could have been it, but he's too fake. He's too pretentious. The stupid thing of playing tennis that he was doing shirtless, kicking up that weird green dust, and very over hitting the ball. I mean, the way the video is cropped, you could just imagine a dude sitting there lazily and listily throwing a tennis ball with no power on it, just on the other side of the net. And that's why there's the crop job. He's just basically slow pitch softballing tennis balls to Vivek, and he's just way over hitting it and way enthusiastic. I used to play tennis. His stroke was like he was trying to hit a home run on everything for no particular reason. It was stupid. It was cringy. I don't see anybody going, yeah, I'm going to vote for Vivek because he plays shirtless tennis. I thought it was just completely stupid. But back to Haley, she did say that a win for Russia is a win for China. I like that message over there. It amps up the dislike of Russia and why Ukraine needs to be backed in this and not let Russia get the foothold. She bagged on Vivek a little bit, brought up that Putin would absolutely roll past Ukraine. And somewhere in there, they bring up that Putin has said that he will go into Poland after Ukraine and everything. So these Republicans were not sitting up here. A bunch of them were not sitting up there saying, like, we need to leave Ukraine alone and get out, which some Republicans do. A lot of them were pro-Ukraine and fought for their points on it. She slammed Vivek's lack of world stage prep, which I completely agree with. The audience very much cheered for that. And this is when Haley, I think, starts to bring herself up in my eyes a little bit. She, in reference to Russia, brings up the insurrection death, the former ambassador who was poisoned. Good points there. DeSantis says, we are going to pull out of Ukraine. I'm going to pull those people back, and I'm going to send them to the border, and I'm going to kill people. DeSantis has been on this very Nazi jackboot Gestapo thing lately of, we're going to kick ass and take heads. Trump or Swampy takes one piece of Trump and puts it out there, and DeSantis tries to bring the fire and fury angry man Trump out there. They're trying in some ways to channel Trump, even though he wasn't there. Vivek tries the cult of personality way. Trump tries the big talk mafia don way, and they just both fall so flat for me. I mean, seeing you saw the facial thing there with DeSantis. He just thinks he's gonna go to the Mexican border and just be machete and just start waiting for people to come through ports of entry, illegal or otherwise, and just start lopping off heads and sending headless bodies back over to the Mexican side, and the cartels are going to acknowledge that, and we're not going to have any more illegal Mexican immigrants because there's DeSantis standing there with a machete taking heads. That's how he portrays himself. It's utterly ridiculous. Bergman says he wants to be tough on China. He wants to deter China. He attacks Biden's withdrawal on Afghanistan. So Bergman was kind of an odd guy. He was sort of a little bit of a more centrist Republican, but still definitely got his Biden shots in there. Tim Scott, Bergman, Asa, I think were the weakest ones out of all of it. Tim Scott says he would get in there, he'd fire the IRS, he'd hire the Border Patrol, he'd be big on the southern border. He brought up the fentanyl deaths, brought up how many people that we're catching, but then postulates into things where we don't have data on. If we're catching so many people, how many people are getting through? And I think that is ridiculous. If you have built a fine mesh sieve, right? You have a filter that is like 7 stages, and you're like, look, this 7-stage carbon and silica filter caught 99% of the chlorine in this water. And then you sit there and say, I wonder how much chlorine's actually still getting through. That to me amazes me. It's like you're struggling to make the point of Biden's border policies, and you acknowledge how many people are being caught, but then you go off on a trail to the left and say, imagine how many didn't get through. If the policy and the border checks are doing their job and they're catching a lot of people, maybe very little people are getting through. I think it's kind of ridiculous to say, well, something works, but imagine that it isn't working. He wants to complete the border wall, but thinks that it won't stop the fentanyl coming in. And no matter all the data that you see about the fentanyl coming in through legal ports of trade, and it's not just coming over the Mexican border, but we're going to come back to fentanyl a little bit later. Asa says that he would use lethal force versus immigrants that come through with guns. He wants cooperation with Mexico. He wants to work with Mexico and have them do their part in it. DeSantis comes back and says he would send the U.S. into Mexico to fight against the drug labs, and then he's again doing the chop the heads off kind of thing that he's been talking about. He comes back to that. So I don't know where he thinks that we could send people into Mexico without Mexico's permissions. He just thinks we're going to cross the border and start storming Mexican drug labs like Bad Boys or something like that, and except more aggressively, less stealth, more aggressive. DeSantis is kind of crazy about this. Again, the machete thing. Pence says we secured the border under Trump. 90% of the fake asylum claims were down. Pence seems to think the Trump administration actually did something because the government shut down. I don't think highlighting that Trump had a hissy fit because of the impending caravan that went away like a fart in the wind, and we had that government shut down because Trump threw a baby fit. I think that was a weak point for Pence. We secured the border. I don't believe that for 1 second. 90% of the fake asylum claims are down. That's data I don't have. I'll have to take him at his word on that one. Christie brings up that what's happening is China is giving the fentanyl to Mexico, and that's where it's coming in. And he says we need to go more after China for fentanyl and less on Mexico. And to me, that is the thing that is supported by the data, that it's coming through legal ports of trade, and that its root is China. And we need to be tougher on China and a little bit less of the consistent rally call against Mexico, where it's, they're sending their worst people, they're rapists, and they're criminally insane, and the asylums are letting out, and people are coming over from the asylums. All that ridiculous rhetoric. Then they move on to education. DeSantis blames school lockdowns. He thinks the Nazi stuff he's doing in schools is working, where there's no CRT stuff in K through 12, which there never was. There is no gender stuff in K through 12. Let's not forget Florida is now beginning to have PragerU in its schools, which is absolutely pathetic. He wants to increase civic knowledge and everybody to know what it's like to be an American. Increasing civic knowledge, I agree with. Fine. The overall theme of the Republicans in this education part here is anti-intellectualism. They absolutely want to blow up the public schools. They want to blow up teacher unions. They want to blow up the Department of Education. Vivek picks up from DeSantis and says we don't want to get in with the alphabet groups of the LGBTQ. He wants civic tests for seniors in high school. He's like, I had to do a civics test to be a citizen of this country. Why can't seniors do it? Let's not forget this is the guy who wants to restrict voting to 25 and up. The youth is not going to have that. Him trying to play up to the youth with the stupid shirtless tennis thing is pathetic because he's crapping and shitting on the youth every time he gets the chance, including this voting age thing. He is like, let's get the money out of the teacher unions and the Department of Education and let's give it to the parents. Like, that makes no sense. What does he think he's doing, a COVID stipend? He's going to blow up the Department of Education and that money would just going to give to the parents of school kids? Made no sense whatsoever. He wants to destroy teacher unions, and he's very, very pro-nuclear family. What's really funny about this is he sat up there and said the nuclear family is the core of the United States, the best thing in the United States, and Tim Scott had just got done talking about what it was like to grow up in a single-family home where he was just with his mother, who was working 16 hours a day to pay for him to go to school and have a life and everything like that. And it was such polar opposites to see Tim Scott say, you can rise out of poverty and you can be here like me on the stage to be running for president. And he's proving that hard work can do it and everything that his mom taught him. And then there's Vivek going, no, it has to be the nuclear family. And I'm like, damn, these two are just going to come to rock'em sock'em robots over this if they realize how very different what they're saying is. One saying you can get there no matter what. The other one saying, no, you can only get there if it's nuclear family. And a lot of conservatives were very pro nuclear family a couple of years ago when everybody was like BLM and Antifa's Marxist, and they want to dissolve the nuclear family and bring it to village. The village raises the child. So he brought back an old point that I haven't seen anybody talk about in a while. Bergman wants to protect women's sports. He pushed back on DeSantis's indoctrination. He still wants to get rid of the Department of Education. Haley says bring back vocational classes. I agree. You should have a shop class or a car engine class. The physical trades need to come back. It can't everything be about computers and computer sciences and everything. You still need tradesmen and craftsmen and everything like that, and schools should absolutely have it. I had shop. I still went to an school in an era where there was a home ec class and there was a shop class and everything like that, and I went through both of the classes, to be honest. But yeah, I think there does need to be vocational classes in there, and the divide between the physical workers and the more sit behind a chair workers and everything, that intelligence divide that you see needs to go away a little bit. There is nothing out there saying that a guy who works on cars is supposed to be less intelligent than a guy who trades stock all day. I think that narrative needs to be worked on a bit, and I liked Haley's point there, and then she's like, biological boys don't belong in the girls' locker room. Pence wants to give schools a choice. Bergman comes back and says he wants to increase computer sciences in schools, compete with China. I agreed with this one. As much as the trade classes need to come up, I think the STEM classes and the science, the hard sciences, and computer-related classes absolutely need to come up. The education system in America has to get better overall. Vivek was, saying everything in his household was about education and about doing well. And that's one of the only times I give him a point. I mean, if you think about it, if you were in school in the 80s, who were the people you were always trying to catch up to be? It was usually the Asians. It was from the mid-80s to the mid-90s. Education was pushed very, very heavily in Asian families, and they were always one scoring max grades, and you always felt like you were trying to catch up to the smart Asian kids. I think somewhere after I had been in college and got out of college, it shifted to Indian immigrants were the ones that you needed to aspire to catch up to in grades, and they were the ones being pushed to really focus on their education. And Vivek brought that up, and I was like, yeah, it's one of the only times I agree with what he had said. I can imagine the educational pressure he was under when he was in school and everything, because I watched it happen to the Asians. I had a very good Korean friend, and according to him, there would even be some physical things there if the grades were not up to snuff. So I watched the pressure that he went through, and you just saw it in school. You saw it in the media at the time, the movies and the shows and everything. And I believe Vivek went through that being Indian in a different time period. And I think that focus on education and focus on good grades and doing as good, or seeing education being pressured on you as a child as much as we knew it was for Indians as we knew it was for Asians in a decade earlier. I think that needs to absolutely happen. So now we have the lightning round. Biden is too old. What are your thoughts? Pence is like, we don't need an old president or a young president. We need an established person. Vivek gets upset at this because Vivek thinks it's a slam on him. And I see where Pence is going on this. When you don't want a super old president that is viewed as frail or dementia-riddled like Trump, like Biden, and you don't want a super young president like Vivek who has no established background anywhere. So it's like, you got to get an established person. Vivek thinks he could do it because he could get the young Republicans and the race thing over there. And this is what he's saying. He believes he could pull in some minorities, he can pull in the youth and everything. Tim Scott gets up there and says, well, there's a decline of faith in America. He starts Bible quoting and really wants to break apart the teacher unions. That was a excuse me, that was a transition there as they as they left educational topics and went into faith topics. Tim was hit up with the faith question. He believes there's a decline in faith in the United States. Still brought it back. I think he really wanted to answer the education thing because he brought it back to, we need to break apart teacher unions. DeSantis is asked, should we do mandatory military? Because he was military. He was like, no. I signed up for it. I did it. But I don't believe it should be mandatory. And actually, Navy SEALs have started to get upset with DeSantis today because he said he was in there with the Navy SEALs and everything. It wasn't a stolen valor comment, but a lot of people believe that he portrayed himself as sort of like being that reporter in Saving Private Ryan who was running around everywhere with a typewriter. That's not what he did. He was JAG. And the military was kind of getting upset with how closely DeSantis said he was sort of like boots on the ground, and the implication there, which was not. Christie got asked the question, like, would you, if president, reveal everything the government knows about UFOs? And Christie literally said, like, what is this shit? Why did I get the UFO question? Why are you asking the guy from New Jersey about UFOs? And he gets on one of the commentators about that because she's from Jersey too. And now the lightning round is over at this point. Before we get into their like sort of final words over here, the debate was a complete circus. It was an absolute clown show. The moderators had very little control over these people. They talked over themselves a lot. They pretty much were all unified against Vivek. Haley definitely was. Pence would throw his shots out there. Christie absolutely hated Vivek, as do I. Nobody really got attacked intra-debate over there. There were attacks on Biden. There were attacks on Trump's. Attacks on Trump. People kind of didn't really go after each other too much, except everybody bagged on Vivek. Some people would get on DeSantis, and some people would get on Chris Christie. Tim Scott got left alone. Pence got left alone. Asa and Bergman were largely left alone too. So it just was more, the more prominent figures were throwing some barbs at each other, and then they just kind of flat out ignored the lower bottom half of the people that were there. So in closing remarks, why can you help us make America great again? Bergman was like, I'll secure the border. Fentanyl's a problem. Got to fix the economy. Innovation is the key. He's the guy who's been pushing sciences and computers the whole way through, and wants to see America compete with China for computer manufacturing and computer knowledge. Asa says we can't have a Biden. We can't have Trump. We absolutely have to have new leadership. Reagan brought on out the best of us, which was not true. Reagan did not bring out the best of us. In the dewy, starry-eyed 80s, you may have thought that at the time when we seemed incredibly prosperous, but let's not forget Bruce Springsteen's song "I'm Born in the USA," and when Reagan tried to use it on his campaign trail, and how that song was literally the opposite of how Reagan was using it. The Coke, Wall Street, me infused 80s, while could be idealistic, it was my childhood and everything, we know now they were not as good as we thought they were, with trickle-down economics not working at all, the tamping down of the AIDS pandemic and how it could have been better, similar to COVID, if that was tackled properly and there was less fear on it and less belief it's just a party sexual disease or a gay sexual disease. The 80s could have been better, and the Reagan years are not as good as Asa would like them to believe. He also goes on to say he wants to really secure the border and go with the rule of law. Well, okay, then start with Trump. Tim Scott says, again, I've come from this single-family home. My mom said you work if you're able to, you pay loans if you take them out, or don't take them out at all, and if you're a man, play sports. And there's a weird crowd reaction to that when he says that, and if you're a man, you play sports. I almost feel that some people went, it sounds like a racial stereotype there, that can't a black man do other things? Like, why does a black man have to go into sports? Can't he be the president of the United States? Can't he be the head of manufacturing at NVIDIA's silicone chip factory? It's like, the crowd was a very mixed reaction there. Christie comes up and he says, I am the last person to beat an incumbent Democrat who's well established anywhere. Nobody else out here has done it. It's just been me. The last time anybody defeated a incumbent Democrat was Jimmy Carter. But, I've done it more in the local scenes. I can beat a Dem. None of these others can. A slight point there. I liked where he was coming from. I just don't think he has a chance. Haley's like, I'm going to fix inflation. We want transparency in class. Biden is afraid of me, and she got a lot of cheers for that one. And a lot of military ooh-ahs over that. I don't think Biden thinks anything of Haley whatsoever. I don't think Biden is afraid of Haley whatsoever. But at this point, I came around to thinking Haley was a little bit stronger than I thought she was in the beginning. And I thought she was one of the people who had nothing to lose and rose up from it better. Pence was like, okay, so Biden, botched the Afghan withdrawal, which was mostly because Trump left us with a skeleton crew over there and brokered deals that were not within our best interest. And Biden went and did this attack on energy and took away civil liberties. In the Trump years, we turned it all around and everything was great. I was part of that. If the Trump years were so good and I was part of it, then I can be good in it. And then did God and faith and United States stuff. Vivek says, we've celebrated the diversity in the United States, but we're actually all the same. And then just went on the ChatGPT rant that Chris Christie accused him from earlier, and he didn't learn his lesson. He just basically came back and did it again. God is real. There's two genders, fossil fuels, open border sucks, parents and nuclear family. And it really reminded me of that episode of Family Guy where Lois is like 9, 11, and everybody starts cheering, and she's like, we have it on good authority that terrorists have bought yellow cake uranium and they're going to sell it on the black market because of 9/11. Everybody cheers every time she says 9/11. That's what Vivek was doing. He was buzzword the whole way through. Shallow, empty, no real policy, just buzzwords. DeSantis says, I'm going to send Biden back to his basement. which is pathetic because when Republicans said that Biden was in his basement on the lead up to 2020, they were all crop photos every single time. And this sleepy Biden thing, this Biden's in his basement thing, was the narrative Trump tried to pull to win the election. And anytime people saw the actual full video or the full pictures, you could see they were cropped to prove a point. Like, Biden's alone in his basement. No, he was sitting there in a Super Bowl party. Biden is asleep, sitting in his chair. No, he has his eyes closed because he's praying in church. Look at the full picture. He's sitting in a pew and he has his hands folded, fist in fist, which is what you do when you pray. I mean, to see DeSantis harken back to the Biden in his basement thing, I think is like, dude, stupid. Come up with your own stuff. Like, that stuff has been thrown out and debunked and shredded, and you're going to come back to it. And look at that face right there. I was blue collar. I'm a vet. I'm going to protect parents' rights. Florida is showing that you can do it and you can fight the woke stuff and all this other stuff. But then, let's not forget he has Prager University coming into his goddamn K through 12 school. So, overall, I feel that Asa and Bergman and Tim Scott got the absolute least amount of focus and were totally buried the whole way. Vivek's pro-nuclear family stuff completely shit on Tim Scott's history, and I'm surprised those two didn't start talking about it, and Tim Scott didn't go. If I was Tim, I would have been, whoa, like, you're so pro-nuclear family and thinks it's the only way to be. I'm here right next to you, and I didn't come from a nuclear family. I came from what you would consider a broken home, and I'm here, so what's that say? I let the cast go a little bit longer, and the Hannity stuff started, and immediately Hannity was shitting on Biden, is not cognizant, he's not coherent, thinks there's a big contrast for the people on the stage to Biden, and that's where I turned it off at that point, because I pay Tucker and Hannity absolutely no mind whatsoever. So that was my take on the Republican debate that occurred Wednesday night. Like I said, overall, they had no control over the people that were up there on stage. Vivek was a very common target for almost all of them, and rightfully so. Did he hold his own? Yes, in a very plastic way. You can say that he did, but in a way with any depth, no. I think a lot of cracks were exposed in Vivek. Conservatives are turning on him today, saying that he's, Soros backed and he's taking Soros money. Of course, people have caught up to the Obama quoting and the plagiarizing there. Chris Christie's his threads where people talk about him on Twitter is just rife. Here, this Chris Christie slams Donald Trump. The comments in this thread are like, no, he didn't. The only thing he slammed was a donut and a six-pack. I mean, it is so filled of anti-fat and ableist commentary over there, and just, fat jokes and commentary the whole way through. And it's one thing to call out Trump for, like, misrepresenting his height and his weight and everything like that, and say that he's obese and morbidly obese, which is all factual stuff. And it's another thing to just watch your own party just completely destroy you for being overweight. And I thought Chris Christie did slam Donald Trump effectively and Vivek effectively yesterday, and he's not going to get the credit for it that he deserves, because he's not towing the Trumper line, so he's immediately alienated three-quarters of the Republican base out there. Fox News Democracy 24. No, you're not allowed to claim democracy if you're Fox News. So yeah, that's my opinions on the Republican debate. And if you didn't watch it, consider yourself lucky. If you did boy howdy, did you think it was as big of a clown show and a circus as I did? So that's my ending question for you. This is the political napalm signing off.